Okay, hello, welcome, Mr. Mack-Poole, and welcome to another Elizabethan kind of chalk and talk, if you want to think of it that way. So today we've been looking at the role of the Church of England, and this is one of the kind of the most simple lessons that we could go through. However, the role of the Church of England today in 2020 is very different from what Elizabeth I intended it to be in 1559. Now, it kind of goes without saying that back in the 1500s, the English population was a lot more religious, a lot more observant of Christianity. And that's why she had to pass her acts of religious settlement. However, the role of the Church of England actually went beyond the monarch. Okay, so firstly, it obviously controlled what was preached in the churches, and that message was fundamentally hugely important to Elizabeth I. She herself was a moderate Protestant, and therefore the message which was passed on to the people was a moderate Protestant message. Remember, Protestant comes from the word protest, the protest church. They weren't happy with the Catholic Church, they thought it was corrupt. So if you control what people listen to, you control what they think. So this was one of the most important things to get right in Elizabeth's kingdom. Secondly, it gave guidance to communities. Now this is very important. England was extremely different in the 1500s. There had been no industrial revolution as yet, so most people were rural peasant folk, which meant that they were farmers, they worked the land, and most people lived in small villages. A preacher, vicar, a Church of England priest, was right at the centre of the local community. People would come to him in times of turmoil and in times of strife, or in celebrations for marriage. They delivered sacraments, weddings, funerals, baptisms. They were at the heart of the local community. So these were very influential men. So the role of the Church of England was a lot more broad than it is today. And don't get me wrong, people that go to a Church of England church, they will confide in their priest. However, at this time, as almost 100% of people were Christian and went to church, they therefore had far more influence than what a Church of England vicar would have today. Thirdly, they did what Elizabeth wanted them to do, which was to enforce the religious settlement. Now this was very, very important for Elizabeth. Elizabeth wanted to get religion just right. She didn't want to be too extreme. She didn't want to have a window which looked into men's souls, as she said. But she did want her act of uniformity, which meant that everyone had to go to the Church of England. And think about it, that comes in the word uniform, one form. And she did want people to recognise that she was the head of that church in that act of supremacy. But do remember that she gave herself the title of Supreme Governess, which isn't head of the church. She did that for two reasons. Not to upset English Catholics, and also to respect church traditionalists who wouldn't have believed that the leader of the church could be a man. And the reason that people believed in that patriarchal, male-dominated belief was because Jesus chose men to be his disciples. So that's why church leadership has always seemed to be a male sphere. Fourthly, the Church of England were extremely influential because they legitimised Elizabeth. They had to take an oath of loyalty to her to recognise her as the sovereign of the church. So this was extremely important. And in that way, if these men who are so influential in the local community are all on Elizabeth's side, it legitimises her reign as queen. And last but not least, they ran church courts. Now, church courts were extremely important. They passed inheritance on, which made them very influential in the local community. But they would also be approached for weddings and marriages, as I've spoken about before. But this was something that people had to give themselves into freely. Arranged marriages weren't really Christian. So they did happen, but the priest had to make sure that both parties were willing to marry. So they had a really, really broad role in society, far more broad than they did today. It's quite an interesting way to look at them. And this is why it was so crucial for Elizabeth to have them on side. If Elizabeth did not have Church of England priests on side, she wouldn't be able to rule. They were that important. Which is why she sacked 400 of them when they didn't do what she wanted. Which is why she made sure that there were no Catholic priests in the Church of England, which is why she didn't want any Puritans in the Church of England either. She wanted a nice moderate church which was inclusive, it was a middle way, and therefore she could encourage the English nation to heal itself on this religious divide. Think about it. The Reformation had happened very recently, Catholics and Puritans had killed each other all over Europe, in France, in England, in Scotland. Mary Queen of Scots was run out of Scotland because she could not get Puritans and Protestants to back her. She was a Catholic queen. So religion was a very important topic to get right. So the role of the Church of England was very wide, very all-encompassing, much wider than it is today, and Elizabeth needed these priests on side preaching her message. Thank you, that's Mr. Mack-Poole, over and out.